Fox, which everyone is like, no, don't make that happen.
No, please no.
So what were your expectations coming into Solo?
So for movies that I'm invested in, that I know I'm gonna see, I don't watch any trailers. I try not to watch any TV spots. I try not to look at any images,
Which is hard to do.
which is really hard to do.
Yeah.
I mean, just imagine if you knew that, Spider-Man wasn't in Civil War, how amazing that reveal would have been. So, but I get it, they have to do that. So I didn't see anything for Solo. I had heard all of the drama going on, but that didn't bother me because like that happened with Rogue One. That happens with movies sometimes.
It happens all the time.
I mean, look at Superman 2. Like, holy crap.
Yeah.
But
I'd rather not.
Yeah. I still haven't seen the Donner cut.
The Donner cut is so much better.
Yeah. But so I had no, like, I wasn't going in being like, this is, I can't, I hope it's, I mean, on some level, I had hoped that, we all wanted to, be watchable and be good, but
Sure.
I wasn't going in with the highest expectations. That being said, I thought it was fine. I thought it had some really excellent moments, but overall, it was a movie that, there are certain movies where if I had heard during production that they had canceled the movie, like shut it down, I wouldn't have been hurt. I wouldn't, and this is one of those movies where if, let's say, the Lord Miller issue had happened when filming had just begun, and they went through so much hell, and they were just like, we're not going to make this movie, guys, in some alternate reality.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been, like, going, no, like, I really want to see a Solo movie.
Yeah, because there wasn't a necessity for this.
Right.
No one was chomping at the bit for a Han Solo
Exactly.
movie.
So, I thought it was fine. There are definitely, you'll probably elaborate on some of the issues. But I thought the performances were fine. I thought the main actor, Alden Ehrenreich or something like that.
Alden Ehrenreich. I keep wanting to say Ansel Elgort, but that was someone else they were considering.
That was Baby Driver.
Baby Driver, yeah.
I thought he was fine. There are some really stellar action set pieces in this movie. There's a great heist scene on this really cool like maglev kind of train.
Yeah.
There's the Kessel Run.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Oh, spoilers! Is the Kessel Run in this?
Oops. Okay.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, we got to keep. Everyone's saying like, "Oh, keep spoilers down." Spoilers for what?
Right. I mean, you kind of know. Okay, so I'll try not to spoil like certain character, some characters do or something like that.
Well, there's twists that we can't.
Yes.
But there's too many twists to spoil in this.
But Han Solo, there is the Kessel Run. I mean, then that's something that you've heard about, 12 parsecs kind of thing, and it's been hyped by fans for 40 years.
Yeah.
And that was awesome. There are some great character moments, but it felt serviceable. That's what I'll say. And I felt some of the characters were, including Alden, was almost there with Han Solo, but not quite enough. It's hard to step into Harrison Ford's shoes.
Yeah. I'm almost kind of glad that they didn't do that. Because if you do that, I mean, there's already so many knowing winks in here.
Yeah.
Of stuff like I didn't need to know. Like I didn't need, it's a decent scene, but I didn't need to see the moment when Han met Chewie. I didn't need to see the scene where he got his blaster.
Yeah.
And I didn't really need to see the scene where he acquires the Millennium Falcon. But
those are ingrained in Star Wars lore, and that's something that if you do a Han Solo movie, you're obligated to do.
Which I wouldn't mind if it wasn't so much of like like when the Millennium Falcon shows up, they immediately play a rendition of the Star Wars theme.
Yeah.
As if like an achievement was unlocked.
Yeah.
When you get to that part.
I thought Donald Glover was good.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed I felt was able to embody you know, Lando one of the original characters the best.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's not saying much because there's only a few. There's Han, there's Lando, and Chewie. I mean, the guy who's now playing Chewie is pretty spot on in terms of, you know.
Yeah, I think his performance was the best.
Yeah. Well,
Chewbacca.
his performance as Chewbacca. Yeah, it's believable, and you can believe it is Peter Mayhew, and I mean, that's not a slight on Peter Mayhew as in terms of his acting, because when you're in that costume and you really have to emote and you know and be a physical performer. It's sort of like I just watched The Shape of Water again with my wife, and Doug Jones doing that role was phenomenal. But it's so it's hard to be able to emote sometimes in that big costume. But he was good. Woody Harrelson was fine. I'm gonna be saying that. I feel like I'm gonna be saying that word a lot. This movie was fine.
There's a lot of fine elements.
It's a fine movie with some amazing bits in there,
which is kind of like, I don't know, like it seems like that could be like a negative thing you say about it. It's like because this is a Star Wars film that we're saying is just kind of a fine heist film.
Yeah, but I also think that that's sort of the way I felt about, like, I thought Spider-Man Homecoming was a good movie, but it was also a movie that didn't have as many big stakes.
Yeah,
and some people like that because it brought it back to like the friendly neighborhood roots of Spider-Man. For me, who grew up on the Raimi films, I needed a little bit more epic with my Spider-Man, but I appreciated what they did with Spider-Man Homecoming, and that movie I thought was good, but it was also didn't have any huge stakes in it. Solo, they try and put those stakes in by tying it to the Rebellion and stuff, and tying it to the original trilogy, which, you know, it's hit and miss.
Yeah,
so
sometimes it works.
But I'm not. I wouldn't say, like, this is still a movie I would still recommend seeing. Again, some amazing action set pieces, and just, you know, if you're nostalgic for, you know, if you still need your Star Wars fix, I mean, this does it. And there's some cool cameos. There's some cool moments with other characters. Amelia Clarke was I thought she was good.
She was okay for the purposes of her being this kind of, you know, she's essentially kind of like in like a Casablanca role, right? You know, where she has history here with Han Solo, but it's kind of like muddied up in like other deaths and other work that she's doing. Yeah. And so her allegiance is kind of like brought into question with that.
I liked Paul Bettany. I thought he was, you know, was. I mean, I guess there's Paul Bettany. Yeah. So I guess you can. Are we gonna, like? Can I say what kind of character?
Yeah. So you can say what
he's the bad guy.
He's a crime lord.
He's a crime lord. And he was, you know, he was good. I thought his performance was good.
Yeah.
You know, not you know, blow my socks off kind of, that's a badass villain kind of thing, but he did what he needed to do.
Well, he was conniving enough. He didn't feel.
Yes.
He's like a Bond villain who really enjoys his job.
Yes.
He's a pretty good villain for essentially looking like, you know, the cat scratched him and gave him pink eye. So.
Yeah, but I had thought, you know, I didn't know who he was playing, so I had thought maybe he was going to be a droid or something. But the droid, I thought L3.
I think it's like a. I think it might have been a joke. Its name is like what, like L3. I wrote this down. L337.
Yeah. So elite. Yeah. Really? You know, the most humorous parts came from her. On the humorous parts, I feel like there were, you can, like you were saying, there were parts you can tell where they cut the Lord and Miller stuff, like
there's a lot of humor missing here.
And the humor that was in here, I thought, was incredibly hit and miss. There were parts
definitely
that I felt were definitely forced. There's a part on the train heist where Solo jumps off the ship onto the train, but before he does sort of like this preparatory yell, like, ah, and then he jumps and then he lands and he kind of crashes and then he's like, I'm all right, and I'm like, huh?
Yeah.
I'm like, and there were some moments
that was a dead. I was surprised. That was a dead moment. It was, you could tell it was supposed to be funny and no one laughed.
But it wasn't. So there are a few moments like that where I feel like the transition between what Lord and Miller had to how Ron Howard was taking over, that was one of those bits that just sort of wound up not succeeding.
Well, I get the feeling he wanted to make kind of like I think Lord and Miller wanted to make like kind of like a fun heist film, kind of like similar to like sort of like Ant-Man,
right?
Where it's a heist, but it's very like jokey the whole time, almost kind of like Ocean's 11 type stuff,
right?
And then I think like Ron Howard came in and kind of wanted to do more of like the traditional Western.
Yeah.
With the heist, because there are a lot of moments that are like straight out of like Western stuff.
Yeah.
And I almost question like how much of that was like Miller and Lord, and how much of that was the Kasdans. Because I get the feeling it might be a little bit of both. I think the Western stuff maybe more on the Kasdan stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see, Red Dog writes, a fine movie is not a bad thing, could be a good thing. Just don't introduce people to Star Wars with anything other than the original three. Well,
and that's why I'm saying. When I say fine, it's gotten to the point where you can't say, oh, a Star Wars movie is just fine. It's either knock your socks off or it's god awful. Like like some of the prequels are. And this is a movie doesn't get anywhere close to the prequels. At least episode I still like.
No, there's personality here that immediately elevates it. Or
there's tons of personality. The characters are definitely are hit and miss, but work for the most part.
Sure.
Unlike a lot of the prequels. But when I say fine, I'm just don't take that as like an insult. Just take it as like I enjoyed it.
Well, it lowers it because I mean, I think I wrote in my review like the film itself is kind of like the Millennium Falcon, in that it will, when it starts up, it has zip to it, but it'll occasionally like break down.
Yeah. You can have to bang it, and you're like, come on, baby.
Like, come on, bring back the personality here. Bring back the heist.
Yeah.
I don't care that he got his blaster now.
Right. And like, I had never even noticed until The Last Jedi the importance of the dice. I didn't know about that. Like, I didn't know you can see in the original trilogy that they hang it, and they never even made a point of it. And then they introduced it with the new movies as like a big symbolic thing, and I had never even noticed it in the original trilogy.
Well, there's a ton of, I don't know how deep we want to get, but there's a ton of stuff if you've been keeping up on like current Star Wars.
Yeah.
There's a lot in here that they bring up here. Like there's a couple things from like Star Wars Rebels they bring into play.
Great series, by the way. If you haven't checked out, I highly recommend Rebels.
Oh yeah, it's have they finished already?
I believe they just finished.
Just finished.
So
Okay.
4 seasons total.
All right. So they bring over stuff from that. They bring back Warwick Davis for. I apparently had to look this up. I didn't know that. I thought they just introduced him as a kid, but apparently this was a character from the Phantom Menace.
Is it the same guy?
Yeah. It's they try to spell it differently, but it's essentially Weasel.
Is it Anakin's friend on Tatooine? No. Okay, so
no.
He played the alien that Greedo's race. He played Annie's friend, but he had like 2 or 3 different like roles in episode 1 or something. But it's not like a Star Wars movie unless you got like Warwick Davis doing something. He had a speaking role. He had like 3 lines. I'm sure after
and he did a great job with those 3 lines.
Well, hey,
he really did.
He was good in Deathly Hallows. I liked his role in Deathly. He had
Warwick Davis is always good. He's got to stand out. So.
Yeah, definitely. Warwick Davis was cool. There's some other cool moments with characters. There's I thought it's a very small thing, but it's like a Rogue One throwback with a character you kind of see in Rogue One. That's all I'll say.
Oh yeah,
but it's not an important role. It's one of the.
It exists entirely. There's a cameo of a character that exists entirely for a twist, because by the time we get to like the 3rd act, I think the film is kind of eased into its kind of twisty heist plot of deception.
Yeah.
Because there's a moment where there's kind of like a showdown with the bad guy where it's just kind of like twist after twist after twist. Yeah. That by the time we get to like this big reveal of like the secret villain cameo, it's so like left field where you think like oh, I see the hologram, I know who it is, and then they take off the hood and you're like, wait.
Yeah, right? And you're like,
why is he here?
Wait, yeah, but I will say, like I'm not even going to mention the. I won't say.
No,
anything
it's worth not spoiling. Just to watch your jaw fall through the floor.
It's a really great like geeky kind of nerdy moment for myself at least. But it's also like. It's also something that's probably not going to go anywhere.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
it's
but it was put in there. It's I'm a little bit torn on like it was great for the moment, but for the entire story, it doesn't really matter.
I get the feeling I almost think that might be like a Miller Lord decision, because they realize like, man, this isn't going to go anywhere because it's going to end with like Han going off this like, hey, let's work for Jabba. So why not just throw the most out there twist at the end there?
Yeah. Which
it's entirely left field, but it doesn't. I don't know. It didn't break the film for me. I get the feeling for some Star Wars fans it might break that illusion.
If you look at the overall Star Wars, like all of like the TV shows, the comics, and everything as like one giant story, I like that point kind of connects it to other media.
Oh yeah.
I won't say what media. But I like that, even though it wasn't serviceable, for like, it didn't make sense in the, I mean, maybe it did, but we'll find out later in like other movies.
You might have to do research on this
to
figure out if this syncs up with anything.
Yeah, right.
Which it probably might if you read all the novels and comics.
I wouldn't put it past them to do a Han Solo 2, but maybe it could be Calrissian.
There was talk of a Lando film, yeah.
Yeah, which
Lando was pretty fun in this film.
Yeah.
For for having confidence in having like a Donald Glover try to put on the whole Billy D. Williams shtick.
Oh yeah.
I mean, yeah, there are a lot of moments where it felt like him and Alden Reich were trying to like put on like costumes. It kind of felt like they were playing pretend a little bit, but I think that's mostly because I think that's more of a fact of just like they're trying to make it look like old fashioned and rustic.
Right.
So that it looks more like it almost kind of looks like they're playing dress up. But the good news is they try to play up the roles,
and it's hard to fill those. It's hard to fill those clothes, those shoes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought Donald did it a little bit better than Alden.
Well, he was having more fun.
He was having more fun.
He was more. He didn't. I think that's the joy of being Lando, is that there's not a lot of callbacks you can make from the original trilogy.
Yeah.
So he's pretty much just like open season for whatever you want to do. So
I
he's
also
already
feel
defined.
like Alden was getting a lot more heat because I had read somewhere that there were like they had to bring in an acting coach for him, or they had to do like, and I'm not sure if that's even true, but that would have put a lot more pressure on Alden to not screw up. And so maybe he was a bit more critical of himself, and maybe he didn't let himself go as much as he could have, like Donald did. Yeah,
I like the fact though that they didn't try to make him full Solo because like the older Solo is a lot more. He's more curmudgeon-y. He's more grumpy, and so like this is like the younger Solo you want to see kind of build up.
He's a bit more pessimistic, and yeah, I agree. Like having him. As much as I would have liked to see a bit more of maybe some more wittiness or some more sarcasm and stuff, seeing him before that allows it to build to Harrison Ford's Solo.
Well, there are bits and pieces of it where he does have that great kind of like swashbuckling nature.
Yes.
Like there's a really great scene in the Millennium Falcon when he kind of corners Emilia Clarke, and they have a very quiet moment, and that's like something like straight out of like an Errol Flynn movie.
Sure
and
is.
That's something you want in a Han Solo film. And there's a lot of scenes in there that you kind of do want. Like the heist on the train is great. That's exactly what you want to see. There's a great kind of like Old West showdown they have with like who will draw their blaster first. Like that's cool stuff you want to see in a Han Solo film.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great elements like that. That's just, it feels slowed down by all this other like set dressing of like building him up. Because they actually do make Han really like interesting as like building up from just being a slave to becoming a scoundrel outlaw.
Yeah,
I like that he didn't start off like that. Lando was fun, but he was like easy because he was already kind of a pirate.
Right.
So when we get to Han, we kind of, I mean, of all like the origin stuff they got to build up, I like the fact they do build up to him being an outlaw. Yeah. Because you get to see a different side of him. You get to see him kind of ease into the role. That being said, like I think more of the acting might have just been because like the smolder and the swagger of him.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of scenes where he just like he enters like he's doing the classic Han Solo pose of like, you know, thumbs on the belt and all that. So that stuff kind of works. But that droid,
Yeah.
like obviously all, you know, L3, you know, the droids are always the comic relief here. I think that this one, like, it always seems like the droids kind of don't want to help the humans in all the Star Wars movies.
Right.
Like C-3PO was just kind of a wuss. The one from Rogue One was just kind of like snippy.
Yeah.
And
Alan Tudyk.
and I'm trying to remember what Alec Tudy's name was. Collection of numbers and letters.
Yes. Yeah.
All droids have the same name.
TSO.
But L3 is kind of interesting because it's like to the nth degree of like those droids. It's like they build her up to the point where it's just like saying like, oh, L3 pilot the ship. It's like, man, fuck you.
Yeah, right.
I ain't working for the humans no more. And they really do kind of force this whole different aspect of droids. Like it's one of the she's kind of like the woke droid.
Yeah. K2SO was Alan Tudyk.
K2SO.
Yes. I'm just waiting for when we get a completely non-humorous droid that maybe is just all badass. Like in the Star Wars lore, there's a droid called IG-88.
Oh, IG-88.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's an assassin droid. And it's a bounty hunter. So I'm looking forward to if we ever get to the point where they introduce a droid and you're not expecting it to just be, you know, dead serious.
He was the villain in the Jedi Knight video game.
Oh, okay.
So that's so yeah. I mean, and there's like it has like full motion cutscenes in there too. So if you want to see, like kind of like that cold, emotionless droid, there he is right there.
Right on.
I mean, there are a few in the Star Wars universe. Like there's that the droid enslaver from like Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. They had a throwaway line too that Woody Harrelson killed a certain character that I thought was like, I'd like to see that, but they just sort of like, oh yeah I killed this person, and you're like, wait what? Like that so it was sort of like because that was another character much like Boba Fett that was kind of became very popular with fans and was hyped a lot but had very little screen time.
Yeah.
At least in the movies. But that was sort of like, he must be pretty badass if he did that. Yeah. I guess. But I just thought it was sort of like one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, well maybe when we get to a Captain Beckett movie, you know, we'll be able to see that. Beckett, a Star Wars story.
The Beckett stars, the prequel.
Right? Yeah.
How deep does this shit go? Yeah, like that's the biggest problem though. I think with this prequel is the same problem with any prequel is that we know what's going to happen to these characters, and that's why I like stuff like Rogue One so much more, is because Rogue One, it's with entirely original characters where you don't know if they're going to make it out alive or not, so there's tension with that.
Right.
Here, we know Han's going to live, we know Lando's going to live, we know Chewie's going to live, and we more or less know what's going to happen to them.
Yeah.
While we introduce all these other characters, and they're kind of just up in the air.
Yeah.
Which I'm glad that there's enough of them. That there's plenty
some ambiguity.
Yeah, there's plenty of like original characters to theorize enough, like who may or may not enter in on this.
Right.
So that part I like. I like the fact where it gets twisty, where it keeps the heist angle going. Hey, how you doing, River 2? But thanks for that cool emote there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talking about Solo. But yeah, I like that. I like when the film actually has confidence in itself. When it does want to become this heist film. When it does want to become the Western.
When it has a purpose aside from trying to tie back into the regular lore.
Yeah.
And just when it has a purpose for like the main story and you don't have to, have a wink and a nod kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is nice fan service, but it's not it's a little, when you do too much fan service, then it can kind of hinder it a little bit.
The other problem too, I think, is kind of I think the pacing is a little bit too quick. it's too quick because like we shift so quickly from like a slave planet to like a battlefield to like the snowy planet of the heist. So we jump around to so many places. Like you could probably like blink and like miss the scene where they have to escape a black hole from an octopus.
I would have liked to see a little bit more of like a montage of the 3 years later, where it's where it's, you know, he joins the Imperial Army, and then it shows 3 years later and he's in the trenches and everything. But I would like to see maybe a really cool montage of him starting out a little bit like very optimistic and kind of slowly going down, and the only thing he has to give him hope is seeing another character again.
Yeah.
And I would have liked to see a little bit more of a progression instead of cutting immediately to 3 years later.
Yeah.
That would have helped, I think, a little bit in terms of fleshing out his character as well. So
there's only one problem with that. The movie's 135 minutes long already.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a slog for like how much they put in there. Let's see. I don't see why being a prequel and knowing characters are going see your peers going to live makes a movie bad. It doesn't make a movie bad, but it does kind of remove some of the tension there, I guess. I think more for like events more than anything, more than deaths. It's just kind of like we kind of know what's going to happen to them. So there's a little bit. It doesn't usually hinder a film usually, but if it can escape like references and stuff like that and become its own thing, then you can forget about that stuff.
I mean, I still think you can make a great movie with characters as a prequel where you don't know, or you know what's going to happen with those characters, but you're still engrossed in the story.
Sure.
I'm trying to think of a movie that's done that well in terms of a prequel to something we've seen, and it was
It's not a hugely great one, but I think Monsters University is a good example.
Yeah.
Because that's a great example of both showing, you know, we know what's going to happen to them, but we don't know the exact route. Because like we immediately assume, Mike and Sully are they're gonna graduate from college and they're gonna become great monster scarers.
Yeah.
Except that doesn't actually happen in the film. They take a much different route going there. So you can still play around with stuff.
And I really wish like the prequel trilogy was able to do that more competently, because there are some moments in the prequel trilogy that are just spellbinding, but it's surrounded by a lot of issues, and I feel like the prequels had such a great opportunity to we know Vader.
Right.
Vader's character. Well, we don't know his character, but we know like what's going to happen to him. We just don't know how. And I feel like some of what we saw was great, but other times were just a lot of times, I guess, for me in that trilogy was didn't need to be done.
I just realized that it's kind of more depressing to watch Solo now, because like the most recent vision that people have of him is Han getting stabbed by Kylo Ren. So it's like, oh, let's go on a new adventure. No, it's not going to end well.
You know how they should have opened Solo? Opened it with that scene where right before as he's getting stabbed, and then it cuts to him like thinking back on his life, and then you cut to the entire Solo movie, and then you cut back to this, and it's just him falling off the bridge. Cut.
Oh man. I could so imagine Miller and Lord doing this. Just begin the film with him getting stabbed by Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
And then just freeze frame and just like, you're probably wondering how I got here. See, it's like Spider-Man. We know he has 3 movies of a reboot, but we know he's going to live. But we still go and see it. Except that it's different versions of it. So that's the problem, though. It's like, this is more or less in the lore.
Spider-Man's died in the comics as well, so...
Yeah, comics are a little different because you can play around with like the lore and stuff like that.
There are 2 marks now. Yeah, I know, right? I know.
Every time.
I know. People thought I was...
Even wore a fucking hat and I still get compared to him. Yeah, I duplicated myself for this review.
I'm going to try and...
Can you get the hair like that?
Oh, it's on the other side of your face, but...
Is that... Mirror.
Yeah.
Except they both got beards, so then it screws
I
you
know.
up. Let's see. Yeah, it does down the suspension there. Like I said, like the other big thing, too, is like we know it's probably not going to work out for Solo and Emilia Clarke's character.
Yeah,
which kind of adds kind of a depressing note, but also kind of an interesting one because their relationship is great to watch unfold in kind of that Casablanca manner.
Yeah.
And it's almost kind of like a reverse Casablanca, not to give away too much what happens, but how they kind of end up. Because you're waiting for that moment where their relationship is going to break, where she's going to either betray him or he's going to kill her or something's going to happen like that. And that I did find more interesting.
Yeah.
So in that regard, I guess the being a prequel there actually helped add suspension there.
True.
Among like other stuff that didn't add suspension to it. See, I think Star Wars fans take lore way too. Well, that's.
I mean, that's with anything though. I mean,
that's Star Wars.
You look at football fans who paint themselves and go to games and stuff, and you look at people who go to conventions, and you look at, Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter fans, and people tend to take stuff seriously, but it's also like.
What's the whole like? I think it's when they started taking it as a religion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, which they do in England.
I love when they did that bit on they did a bit on Mad TV where after The Force Awakens, the Phantom Menace came out, they went to go interview George Lucas, and he's like, well, people consider Star Wars a religion, so does that make me God? And their interviewer's just like, no, that doesn't make you God. You know what? I wasn't asking you.
Oh man, can you believe? So next year. Episode 1 will have been 20 years.
Oh man, we got our anniversary screening in theaters.
Oh man, 20 years since the Phantom Menace.
And yet we've already had an anniversary of that with the 3D screening.
Oh yeah, that came and went, didn't it?
Yeah, they were planning to do all of Star Wars, and then they realized, oh, that was a bad idea.
Yeah, nope.
So one good thing that came at Disney by it.
Yeah.
There. Yeah, I mean, there are bits and pieces of this film work. I think that's the problem though, is that when they got around to cutting it up in post production, that kind of
a Binks anniversary. Shut up. Shut up. How dare you?
Oh no!
Don't even mention no.
We're gonna bring up Binks here. Spoilers: Jar Jar shows up. He's the true villain.
Well, there was that whole fan theory that Darth Sidious's master was Binks. Like,
yeah,
Darth Binks was.
Have you ever seen them in the same room together? I don't think so.
How could Binks miss getting shot and do all of those moves that were unexpectedly resulted in favor?
Yeah,
like in his survival and everything. Like, must be a Sith Lord.
That's one hell of a fan theory.
Yeah. Oh, there's videos on YouTube. Like, people are still adamant about it.
They really want Binks back in there.
They do. I don't know why.
Darth Jar Jar, man.
Yeah.
Get to rewatch the horrible dialogue given by bad actors. Yeah. Oh, to do a remake of the Phantom Menace. Oh god.
Just give Disney time.
Give them time.
Give them time.
Someone made a tweet saying 2077 reboot the entire Star Wars trilogy.
I could still be alive by then.
We could live to see the reboot of the reboot.
Given scientific breakthroughs, we could be like 150.
So yeah, the film is inhibited by it's very much held back by I think that the reworking here, because you get the feeling that there was either a comedy here or a heist here or a western here or kind of even maybe an Audie Murphy type of military story here. But as a result, whatever happened in between shifting focus with directors, it just ends up getting diced up, and you get bits and pieces of better genre films that could have been.
Yeah.
Which is probably I enjoyed it, but it's so frustrating to see it not kind of ease into it. Like Rogue One, it eased into its genre. It became pretty much the Dirty Dozen by the end of it. Yep. And so this, you're kind of it's almost kind of like a heist film, but it's almost kind of a western. It's frustrating.
Yeah, they're having. Yep, I mentioned this. James Mangold is set to direct Boba Fett, which
that scares me. Not for James Mangold. He's a great director, but in terms of what the studio is expecting of him.
Yeah.
That really scares me. That if they're not going to go ahead with his vision. Yeah.
I feel like after Logan though, where they pretty much allowed him to do his total vision, I think they would you know, and they gave Ryan Johnson a lot of leeway, it seems, in terms of, like, maybe that's just because Ryan Johnson aligned well. But, you know, Ryan Johnson, like, he wrote the entire script for Last Jedi, and they were giving him a whole new trilogy to do what he wants. So I feel like James Mangold can definitely succeed on that level as well, as long as, you know, they can allow him to, you know, as long as, I guess, he doesn't do something completely, like, R-rated Boba Fett with, you know, Twi'lek strippers and everything and all this, but, you know, Boba Fett is a stupid, well, you know, arguable.
Mangold can do PG-13. He could make it, he could probably make it work, but that depends if the executives know what they're buying into. If Mangold has a vision, if he has a genre that he wants to do here, and they let him do it, that'll work. But if I get the feeling that was the problem with Miller and Lord, is they wanted, you know, like I get the feeling maybe they thought like, they're comedic boys, but they can change if we get them on Star Wars.
But I think if you have maybe a hard PG-13 like Dark Knight PG-13 for Boba Fett, you know, you could definitely.
Possible. You know, well, hell, Rogue One is pretty hard for a PG-13.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
I feel like you could tell a good Boba Fett story. Time will tell.
After Rogue One, I have more faith that they could do that.
Yeah.
More faith that they could take on James Mangold if they're. I mean, they seem to be embracing the darkness with it, you know, embrace the darkness.
Well, and it's also in terms of the darkness, you have to choose your characters. You can't just have a Yoda movie and make it be dark and gritty. But Boba Fett, he's, you know, the underworld, this bounty hunters and everything like that is a scary, dark underworld that you can tell a great gritty story with, and it makes sense. But it's like, you know, there are certain characters that you're not gonna want to, you know, tell, like, you're not going to want a Mon Mothma story and be like, it'd be super gritty. I want to see a Yoda Origins movie. Yeah, like, I feel like you might
possibly,
you gotta get it in before Frank Oz dies.
Oh, God.
Otherwise, you know, I mean, as much as, you know, I like Tom Kane, but his Yoda voice is okay, but it's you're never going to beat the original Frank Oz. So
yeah, I mean, well, look at just look at what they do on like Sesame Street when with replacing like Frank Oz's characters. Like the other puppeteers who do voices on them, they come close, but you're still kind of like, it's not quite there. Like once you've heard like Frank Oz's, you know, Bert from like the Bert and Ernie segments, you can't hear Bert's voice the same way again after that.
Yeah.
So it's
I don't want the.
What's wrong with the puppet? I love the puppet.
No, you have to go back to the puppet. That's what made The Last Jedi so amazing, was they had a puppet Yoda. Like I rolled a tear when they did the reveal of Yoda.
Hey, Yoda's like 600. I don't know. Do you think Yoda would be really that less wrinkly at like, I don't know, 500?
Yeah,
to do that?
Yeah, like
if we're even going back that far.
He's like in episode 1, he's like 850-ish.
No, he was like 900.
No, he died. He returned the Jedi.
That's right.
The original trilogy, in the prequel trilogy.
We're 900 years old. You
look as good. You are not. I hated the puppet. Well, okay. Agree to disagree.
You don't like the Yoda puppet.
You don't like it. You don't like the puppet. But I like the puppet.
Look, well, okay, well, it's either puppet Yoda or CGI Yoda. Choose carefully. Choose very carefully.
You don't want to like. You can do CGI Yoda, right?
Yeah.
But you have to definitely be much more careful.
Yeah. You gotta take it easy, yeah.
Well, yeah. Now that we've gotten like, I'm anxious to see, like, just a digression. You mentioned the CGI like Thanos. I'm anxious to see the next Avatar, to see how far we've come from the first Avatar, because the effects in the CGI in Avatar is still blows my mind. Like they did that in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, that was a year before Clash of the Titans.
It doesn't blow my mind for James Cameron.
For James Cameron, yes.
Well, because if you go back and look at like Terminator 2 from being like 1991, you're just like, holy crap, that's like nothing else they were doing.
But now we've gotten to like Thanos was amazing in general. Like I thought Thanos was really well rendered and everything. So I'm anxious to see. Who knows if they do a Yoda movie and they do fully CGI, that it could it could be just as good, but there's just something about that little puppet. I don't know, man.
But that's the thing though. Like if the central character is Yoda, and he's gonna be CGI, like it begs the question though. Like why not just make the whole film CGI?
Yeah.
Why not just make a whole animated film?
True.
At that point, if you're going that far, you might as well. If it's the main character we're talking about, that's CGI.
Yeah. If it's like the planet of. And I don't like.
Or for the Planet of the Apes trilogy, yeah.
Yeah, well, like, but like if it's also if we get to see like Yoda's people and stuff, and they never revealed, like, there's still a mystery that I'm not sure I would want to know a lot about Yoda's origin, because that's something that I find appealing to him as a character. Is you don't know like where he came from or what race he is, or
well, someone's mentioned in the chat here about with like Boba Fett. Because like they thought like Boba Fett was like a stupid character to do it. Boba Fett was only cool because he was mysterious.
Right.
So and the fact that there's so little to him, I think makes Boba Fett a much better character to do in a prequel. Because like much like with Lando, there's not a whole lot of winks you can do at the screen with it.
And I feel like the prequels aside, like if you look at Boba Fett in the expanded universe before it got retconned, and you look at some of like the Bounty Hunter Wars and those books, you still see Boba Fett do some really badass stuff, but there's still an air of mystery to him that you don't necessarily need to know everything about him. You just know like he's on his mission and he has to deal with these characters, and you may have like a moment of backstory, but not enough, but just to keep you going, being like, oh, that's cool.
Well, someone's bringing up here with
he shouldn't have gone out like a bitch in Return of the Jedi. That made me so mad. That was
man. You want to talk about people get mad at The Last Jedi for those deaths? You look at
was
Boba
that?
Fett.
And maybe that I'm gonna blame that on Richard Marquand. I don't know.
Boba Fett, where?
Boba Fett goes out like such a bitch.
But I love that they build up so much to this mysterious character. It's like, oh, he's gone. Sarlacc pit for you.
Yeah, but in the expanded universe, he got out.
He did, so who knows? You might see him in Episode 9. You don't know.
You don't know.
You might see an aged Boba Fett come back.
That's right.
Yeah, someone was mentioned here with like Rocket and Groot, the CGI was good. But I think the thing with that is, though, is like we're used to Rocket and Groot working so well in CGI now.
Yep.
We're more used to Yoda being more effective as kind of like a puppet.
Yeah.
Because I think like if you look at him in like like Clone Wars, or even if you can find the two cuts of the Phantom Menace between the CGI and the Muppet, you can see kind of more of like a difference in emotion. Like there's everyone uses like with practical effects, but there's just something more interesting about him being there and reactive with him when you kind of like scrunch his face. Stuff
and that's why in a lot of movies with practical like even CGI effects, like for example Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, they used a lot of practical effects to stand in for the beasts, so that you could interact with something. Because when you're just acting against green screen, you lose some of the emotion, some of the acting from the actors, because they're not acting against anything. And when you put something in there with them, it feels more genuine. Yeah,
there's a perfect example of this, of like working with is working with green screen. Is like compare Who Framed Roger Rabbit to Cool World. Both those films involve live action characters interacting with animated characters. And with Who Framed Roger Rabbit, they used dummies, they used robots, they used little like tennis balls and makeshift go-karts and stuff like that to simulate where the cartoon character would be.
Yep.
And it made it a whole lot easier for the actors to interact and like make their emotion genuine. You look at Cool World, they were acting against nothing. So there's a moment where like in Cool World where Brad Pitt puts his arm around a cartoon character, and if it's basically just him doing this.
Yeah.
And so if you're trying to balance that and the animators are trying to, you can see like the seams there.
Yeah.
And you can feel like there's nothing there.
Peter says he blasts out of the pit in the special edition from the 90s. I've never seen that, and I've watched those special editions religiously. I'll have to rewatch them again, but I swear I don't remember that ever happening.
It's like a JFK video when the barge explodes. Like if you look closely here, like, you can see the jetpack go out and to the left.
And there's a midget in the back of the forest here that's hanging himself in Wizard of Oz. Like I don't remember that at all. I'm fairly certain. I don't believe that's in there, but you know what? I'll go back and watch it just in case. But
I'm pretty sure it's a rumor. Yeah. Half the Avengers Infinity War with CGI characters. You don't really notice these days. Yeah, that's the thing though. It is seamless. Yeah, we are out of the uncanny valley.
For the most part.
With most stuff, yeah. If they put effort into it.
If they put effort, now that you have, the Planet of the Apes, and especially, I think it, like I said, once we get to the next Avatar, I'm going to be incredibly excited to see what they can do, and how they have improved. Like, you give James Cameron 10 years to work off of what he did in Avatar, expect amazing things.
If he improves. That's the problem, though. Avatar is going to have a really huge bar.
Yeah, but what has he done in the past 10 years? He hasn't done... I mean, he did a Titanic remake, or a 3D conversion, and, I mean, he hasn't done anything. I feel like he's devoted so much of his time to just focusing on the tech.
Yeah.
For these movies, so...
Well, that's the interesting thing is, because Cameron's... To the best of my, I don't think he's really done a sequel to any of his films. So that's what kind of interests me and worries me about that.
Yeah.
Is to see if he can go back to it, what could he do? Because if I get the feeling if he came back to Terminator 3, I don't know how much he could do with that. Obviously he didn't direct on it, and he might have brought a little bit of technological achievement to it. But I think that's the glory of him is he's done all these great projects and he's mostly just jumped on the backs of other films.
Yeah.
He just no, I guess Terminator 2 is kind of the only sequel he jumped on, but that's because more money, more tech.
Aliens?
No, Alien was Ridley Scott.
But Aliens, yeah,
that's what I'm saying. He jumped on Alien.
Yes.
And he made it into his own film. Yeah.
Yeah. Holy crap! Oh man.
Yeah, Terminator 2 was fucking awesome.
T2 and Aliens are just great movies to watch back to back.
They're obviously two the best sequels there.
Yeah. So. Oh, absolutely.
Because man, I remember when T2 came out, there was just all they had to advertise was just the liquid metal scenes.
Yeah.
There are commercials that was just nothing but the liquid metal.
And that's goes back to my point about spoilers and trailers and stuff. They spoiled that Arnold was a good guy in the trailers for T2.
Yeah.
But if you watch the beginning of that movie, you're like, oh shit, he's back and he's gonna no, he's the good guy. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Can you imagine not knowing that?
Trailers can do that, yeah.
Trailers do that a lot, and I hate them for it. And that's why I go I'm the only person I go see a movie and there's I'm going to see when I saw Deadpool, the first Deadpool, and there were all these trailers for Doctor Strange and all that stuff. I run out of the theater and I wait outside the theater and I count up 2 minutes and then I go back in for the next trailer, and if it's one, I'll go back out. It's a tough life, okay?
Can't you just close your eyes and ears?
No, because the sound is so much, you can still hear it.
Bring earplugs.
No, earplugs don't stop even deaf people can hear vibration and stuff, and they can sometimes
to bring an iPod. I heard a vibration.
I'm gonna bring up. So instead of just walking out, I'm gonna put in my earplugs, scroll through it, start playing on my iPod. No, I'm just gonna walk out, Mark. I'm just. It's a heavy burden for me.
When you're at the secret movie night, I had to bolt you to the seat when the trailers started playing. But there were trailers you hadn't seen for now big films.
Yes.
You're all about keeping the spoilers out.
I got the inspiration, I guess, for going. The term is Unsullied, because there's a podcast I listen to / Filmcast.
Yeah.
And one of the reviewers, Jeff Kanata, doesn't do that. He goes completely cold turkey.
Mm-hmm.
And he's we're the Unsullied, and he's it's gaining a following. People are getting more and more, sick of being spoiled.
It's easier at press screenings because we usually we usually don't get
Solo.
trailers.
I didn't have to walk out.
Yeah, Solo. Usually with most of them, the only ones who do it are Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers is the only. Well, actually, no. Warner Brothers and Universal are like the only two that kind of like do previews at like the press screenings, so it's easier. Because like we went to go see Deadpool 2, and there was like no trailers for anything.
Which I love that the best. I love those. I love like the pre-screenings, and I love like Thursday night showings the best because you're with the people who really want to be there, and you're not gonna be at a screening where it's like people bring their 4-year-olds or do stupid shit like that.
Oh yeah.
You're among friends, and everyone's there. They're not gonna have their phones out. Everyone's there and glued to the screen and stuff. So those are like the best screenings for me.
Well, when we get the Draft House here, that's gonna be a big thing.
The what?
You haven't heard? We're getting an Alamo Draft House, Minnesota.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And Draft House prides themselves on not having disruptive theaters.
Except the one thing I'll say is the fact that they deliver food to you when you're watching the movie, right? Mm-hmm. Isn't that kind of a distraction where you're having like servers walk through and deliver food while you're...
It depends. I've heard from some people like it doesn't distract them too much. Like they're usually pretty good about it because again, like they really stress shut your phones off, shut the hell up.
Yes, and that's what I like. So. I'll probably be visiting there a lot then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just worry about like the distraction of having people get up or walk around and delivering food. Like if they had like a raised platform where you're up there and then like they put it into like this train, it just kind of went up like that. I don't know.
Something like that.
That'd be cool.
Cinema Grill does that with some of their stuff. Yeah. But most of them do. But the Icon is usually pretty good about that stuff.
Yes.
They usually they have good security. They make sure trailers are limited. And they keep it pretty good there.
Yep.
So do we want to talk about Deadpool 2?
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, like Deadpool, it's more or less like like first off, they had to convince the studio like, yeah, our first one was great, so let us do whatever we want, and that can usually be a bad thing. But here I think it was kind of a safe thing because they more or less gave Fox what they wanted. It's more or less the same bit of Deadpool, except they've expanded the ranks and they just keep on making like the same biting jokes.
It's just bigger. Wanted. It's more Deadpool. It's just on a greater scope.
Which it's kind of like irked me a little bit because like Deadpool's usually pretty good about pointing out all these flaws in superhero films and like the current crop, what's wrong with them, and it misses. And I'm guessing because they don't want to address it themselves is the problem of sequelitis, which is whenever these superhero films, when you usually get a sequel, we usually get too many characters they want to bring in there. And there's a lot of characters they bring into this film.
But there's also a lot of characters that they right away too. Like the moment they introduce them, within like 5 minutes, you're like, "Oh, are we gonna see this person? No. Oh wait, they're gonna be fighting. No."
Yeah.
I also
there's
feel
a little bit of house cleaning.
I feel like at the end of the movie though, it was pretty much like it felt like Deadpool was trolling all of us. With what he did in terms of
always
right, but it felt like he was trolling us in terms of like even trolling the kind of like the sequelitis kind of thing where undoing stuff or not to get too spoilery, but taking certain actions that just kind of undo lots of stuff, and it was. Yeah.
Well, it kind of seems like almost like it seems like almost counterintuitive at points because it seems like they're trying to they try to force in this aspect of like of family. Like he says it right from the beginning. This is going to be a family film.
Yeah. Well, it kind of is. Kind of is.
Well, it does. Like the whole theme of it is his family, is that he wants to to think ahead to the future and all that.
Super dysfunctional family.
So he wants to build up a family and a force. And they also, like, speaking of Terminator 2, they also take the Terminator 2 route of saying, like, maybe not kill everyone.
Yeah.
Except it seems like, without giving too much away, it seems counterintuitive to the end. Because if you remember, like, at the end of, like, the first Deadpool movie, it was just kind of like, oh, I got the villain right where I want him. And like, I guess I'll kill him. And so, like, oh, don't kill him, you shouldn't. And then he does. Anyway.
Right, yeah.
And it kind of gets to that moment at the end, too, because, like, the whole point of most of the film is he's trying to prevent this one death that's going to spark like this huge like apocalyptic future, and it kind of happens anyway, and nothing really bad comes of it.
Well, he stops.
Well, he stops it in terms of the actual event.
Yeah.
But then the film just says, fuck it, and just kills him anyway.
Well, but it wasn't. It was Deadpool that did it, right? Or it was
yeah,
another character.
it's. I mean, yeah, you can argue like semantics, but
it's
I think
like keeping,
but if you
it's like keeping a character pure.
Yeah, but if you get into like the central, if you get deeper into like the central theme of it, you're like, it kind of seems counterintuitive to what you just did there.
Yeah.
Which I don't mind as much if it weren't for the fact they were trying to push it the whole time.
Yeah.
So, let's see, I love the
bee leg clip, the bee leg, with the baby legs or the
like the baby arms and then like the baby legs at that point.
Oh man.
Yeah, there's a lot of renditions. That was the other thing that kind of irked me. It's like it's more or less the same because there's exact scenes from the first film that are just kind of turned a little bit. Like there's a scene where he has to regrow instead of like the baby hands. Now we got baby feet.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if it's not broken, don't fix it kind of thing. But there's gonna be a saturation point where because Deadpool is so jokes driven and so fourth wall breaking that you kind of wonder with Deadpool 3, are they just gonna repeat the same stuff or are they gonna try and do I don't know like how different in terms of maybe even doing something where they like jump out of the screen or break or like leave like the film reel or something like what are they gonna do? But like maybe they're just gonna stick in that mold because I mean people
probably will,
people still enjoy it and I mean I think it still works but there definitely is a risk of getting that saturation point. But I mean I think they're gonna keep on. I'm hoping that in the past what they would do was they would drive it into the ground and then it would die. And with this, I feel like they're not gonna let that happen.
Hopefully. Like if it can still remain like scathing throughout, like still like attacking like superhero films, try to turn itself on its head. But I think more importantly is to turn itself on its head at times because there's like they bring back that moment where they say like, oh, there's not many people around the X Mansion. What's going on there? And then they turn on its head with more of a cameo. But I just want more of that because like I kept thinking like oh, what's up with all these superhero films? And it's like there's this like that whole aspect of like too many characters just seems like they should be making a joke here. It's like wow, there's too many freaking characters here.
Peter says replace Ryan Reynolds with Adam Sandler. Dude, are you just saying shit that you want to make me mad?
He's too old.
He's also terrible.
He's way too old for that.
Like the world needs less of Adam Sandler.
That would be more like a cameo, I think.
I mean, you can go back to the 90s and enjoy your Adam Sandler all you want, but leave him in the 90s, please. Otherwise, we'll just get another Pixels, okay?
Pretty much.
Yeah, alright.
Yeah.
Deadpool 3 will be a Gladiator remake.
Yeah,
okay, alright.
If you bring some themes from that, you could probably do that.
Sure.
But yeah, like I still do. Like I mean, I did laugh at the film. I saw a lot of good laughs at it.
You just kind of worry about.
Well, especially because like it seems like they're trying to like they trying to expand the ranks, but they also kind of want to. He wants to like build up like a family of more diverse characters, which is great. But because there's so many characters and they have to get through so many of them, it almost kind of feels like just kind of lip service going through it.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like that kind of is the joke about Deadpool and kind of one of the things they make fun of at times too.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a tricky balance for Deadpool because he is such a, you could go super wrong with him like in Origins, but once you get him right, you kind of don't want to deviate from that because you have gotten him right and you're kind of afraid to take like super big risks to make it more different because like I said, like you have something that works so well and you're like afraid of screwing it up.
Yeah.
I did, I did. I watched Pixels.
Guilty time, yeah.
I did not pay for it,
Pixels.
but
that was a slog, man.
I don't know, maybe I enjoyed it more than Fan 4 Stick.
No. Fantastic Four actually had some vision and some rules to it.
It had a great, like...
Pixels didn't have rules.
Yeah.
Pixels just said, like, shit, whatever. Centipede, sure. Yeah, Space Invaders, whatever. Just throw everything at the screen.
Yeah.
And make no rules about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, there are so many characters here that could have worked if they did something with them, but it just kind of bothered me that they didn't. Like, honestly, the one character who I found most kind of not that interesting was Domino. And Domino...
I like Domino.
I liked her okay, but in terms of, like, her character, like her whole character is, like, her power is, like, luck.
It was a good intro for the Domino movie.
It could be.
Yeah.
But, like, because, like, no one has time to introduce themselves, like, because pretty much every character has to introduce their plight within their one scene and then get to the next. Domino just says, well, I'm lucky, which essentially means I have plot armor.
Yeah.
So like when we get to like
Deadpool's making fun of though. It's making fun of that. And
I wish it did more of that.
All right.
I wish it did more of that because she has like all this like plot armor. Yeah. So obviously she won't die. She has that. She has the convenience factor. But that's more or less all of her character up until we get to the third act and mention like, oh, I used to grow up in one of these orphan shelters. Like, oh,
yeah,
I could have used that a little bit earlier so I could feel a little bit more for you. But
yeah, true. They had all of their emotion. They gave it to Josh Brolin. All of his emotional backstory kind of thing.
Yeah, they really.
Which I'm glad that they didn't have. The only thing was they definitely simplified his story for that. At least they didn't like. If you look at Cable in the comics, like his backstory is super complicated.
Oh yeah.
Like he is the son of Cyclops and a Jean Grey clone who was taken to the future, like 3,000 years in the future, and raised, and then he comes back to face like Apocalypse. It's super complicated. But here it's just they definitely simplified it, and I'm sure they can leave it open if they wanted their own Cable movie, which.
See, what I was hoping for with the sequel was that it would be more of a buddy picture. Where it would just be like him and Cable, because in the comics
they had a bit of that.
Because there's parts of that, but because it's trying to be more of a family aspect, we don't have as much time for that. We got to get to all the other characters who also don't have as much time. Like we throw in Colossus, doesn't get much to do except a few ass grabbing jokes. We throw in Nega, who has so few lines that her girlfriend Yuki has more lines than she does, and all she does is say hi to Deadpool.
Yeah. Then we'll get that in the Cable movie, or Deadpool and Cable.
Hopefully, I'd be up for that. For Deadpool 3, just make it a buddy picture with him and Cable.
Sure,
that's all I need, man. Yeah. It doesn't have to be anything that more complicated than that. I don't think.
Totally.
If they can go with it,
yeah.
DC, the land of gritty reality. I did like that dig at DC in there.
Oh.
There are a few digs.
There are some great digs in there. Probably the funniest, probably the most like I don't know, like it's hard to call it like the best, like in terms of like the post credit scenes, but just in terms of how much enjoyment I got out of it.
Yeah.
Because like I feel like there were like there's great end credit scenes that help further the story or add like a great reveal, but this was just like. Getting a birthday cake early or something. It's like it's
the perfect fourth wall break
that
you want to see in a Deadpool movie.
Yes,
and that's what's so that's what I love so much about. Like I always get like annoyed with all these secret endings because they always want to like further a plot or introduce something that we may or may not do something with.
Yeah,
like the only time I've actually like really loved one where I laughed so hard at it was with Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah,
when Howard the Duck showed up. And this is in that same league. It's just that kind of like,
You mean at the end of, BVS, you don't want to see, like, Deathstroke and the Lex Luthor team up and stuff? Maybe.
This is interesting. It's an interesting tease. I'm not going to say it gets me excited.
Right, but in terms of, like, just the overall enjoyment, like, I laughed so hard. Like, I haven't laughed that hard in a movie in years. I was just rolling. It was great.
DC damaging cries?
Crises?
Or do you mean damaging crisis? Oh man, if they do, I almost want to see them do a Crisis on Infinite Earths movie just to see how badly they mess it up, because that's a messy ass comic book.
Yeah, that's why they collapsed the multiverse.
Yeah,
it was so complicated, and then they reintroduced it, and like,
yeah. Well, that too, and like because that comic book is like I think it's co-written by Mark Perez, And Perez, if you've ever read any of his comic books, they're like, his speech bubbles are like novels. So
well, he's also the man of the page spreads, all the characters. He does
Yeah.
the giant splashes of tons of characters all together.
yeah, so that it would be a mess if they did that.
Yeah.
Let's see, Volume 2 had 5. Yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 had way too many Easter eggs.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay.
But it makes you question, like, if you had that many Easter eggs, well, why don't you just extend the film for a little bit instead of just making them Easter eggs? I don't
That's James Gunn.
All right.
He seems pretty responsive on Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't know.
James Gunn, if you're hearing this, please tell us why.
James Gunn, are you watching us?
You might be. I don't know. God, the Howard the Duck movie. Hey, how about that for a reboot? That's ground zero. We can build up for a Howard the Duck movie.
I haven't seen Howard the Duck.
You've never seen Howard the Duck?
I'll watch it. I want to see it. I do want to see it. You know, but yeah, I've never. You know.
I love when there are no Easter eggs. That's I love whenever I'm at like the press screenings for these superhero movies and everyone stays till the end credits and then there's nothing.
And they're like, oh.
And then I go, yes, yes, no more. Like I was so happy they did that with Logan. We got to the end of Logan.
I feel like
nothing.
Yeah, I feel like Logan though.
It's like no, you made a great film.
Yeah.
End it. Don't show me any more like X-23. Don't show any more DNA. Don't show any new mutants you want to make for an X-23 movie. No, just end it. Cut it there. Because you have a great film. Don't muddy it up with that.
Yeah. No, I agree with Logan. It's definitely one of those movies that. You know, what was the end credits scene for Suicide Squad?
It was the Justice League, but it was Batman coming at the end, wasn't it?
Was it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was.
Oh yeah,
it was the meeting
talking with
Waller.
with Waller.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything Batman in Suicide Squad was great for the 2 minutes he was in
Which
there.
is like 2 minutes.
Yeah. Like that Joker scene with Batman, that was cool, but holy crap, guys.
It's amazing that the funniest scene in that film, that at least that got the biggest laugh from everyone, is the scene where Batman punches Harley in the face. And it's at like the first few minutes of the film.
And it's underwater too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a pretty awesome scene.
I don't know, I liked when they blew off the guy's head.
Yeah.
What's his name? Yeah.
Slipknot.
Yeah, Slipknot.
Last minute.
You're here just to die. Oh, okay.
He is like, hey, can I join? I don't know if.
Anyways, you know, we could bash Suicide Squad all night, but we won't.
Well, so, I actually like the director too, David Ayer, and
Yeah, but
I hope he can get back to doing more of the films I love, like
Bright.
Like. And then you gotta say Bright.
I watched Bright and I thought it was okay.
I know some people think it's okay.
I thought it was okay.
I think it's much like Suicide Squad. I think Bright's at odds with itself. I think it's at odds with what's his name? Max
Landis.
Max Landis was trying to make a much different film than Ayers wanted to. I think Landis actually wanted to make kind of more of a traditional urban fantasy, and I think Ayer wanted to make it more urban. I think he wanted to make it more like that gritty street crime that he usually does so well.
I'm still not a fan of Max Landis. Like, I thought Chronicle was good, but I don't know. Like, he hasn't done. He's a very egotistical guy.
Yeah.
And he definitely has his opinions, but I just think he's kind of full of himself a lot.
I think
Max, if you're watching, I'm not sorry, but you know,
sorry.
You know, we'll have a discussion. I don't know. Like he did a. I respect him on like, you know, his positions, everything. It's just the way in which he presents them is like, I'm always right about this because I'm a screenwriter, and I'm like, your dad's John Landis, okay? Yeah. Like, there may be maybe there's some nepotism there, but
a little bit.
But yeah, like because I guess is he directing the Werewolf of London remake?
He probably is, yeah.
Okay.
What was that one he directed? Was it like an indie gay comedy? I think he directed.
Really? Okay.
It's one of those like Me, Myself, and someone like that. One of those titles.
Yeah.
I'm gonna confuse it because there's so many titles that begin with me.
But I mean, I'll give him another chance on that. But but after that, like I don't know. I just don't like the guy. I don't know. Maybe he'll redeem himself.
I think you should slow down. How many films has he written in like the past 5 years?
Is there a lot? Because I've only known of like 3.
What was it American?
Yeah, American something.
American Ultra.
Yeah, American Ultra.
Young Frankenstein.
You mean Victor Frankenstein?
Victor Frankenstein. Young Frankenstein.
Oh, he wrote Victor Frankenstein.
He wrote Victor Frankenstein.
Holy crap!
Yeah. And then he wrote the Me Myself and the Gay Comedy.
Yeah.
And then he wrote Bright, and then I think there's something else he wrote in between then. Yeah. So he's working. He's at least working his butt off.
Yeah.
I think he might be working too quick.
Well, all right, but
I know people like Bright.
Yeah.
There was so many like there are parts of it I do kind of dig, but there's so many nagging elements to it where it's like I really don't care about this MacGuffin of the wand. I really didn't like the fact that the elf character is pretty much just Lilu from Fifth Element.
I like Numi Rapace. They just didn't do enough with her.
They didn't
that because she looked badass and she was a good villain, but they didn't do enough with her. She was just the shadow element that was just chasing them.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were moments of Bright that I really liked, and there was, I feel like the world building just didn't meet expectations, and it was very on the nose, kind of like, oh, these are meant to be, black people, and these are meant to be like other minorities, and these are meant to be like, the rich people and stuff like that. And it was very heavy-handed.
It's completely
yeah.
heavy-handed.
Yeah.
That's where you're either, I mean, hell, within like the first like 10 minutes of the film when he mentioned like fairy lives don't matter, and then one of the orcs is on with Joe Rogan, it's you're in it or you're out at this point.
Yeah,
so,
true.
But yeah, I think that's why I didn't like the film so much. It's like it had so much potential, and I only thought it was like just like a tiny portion of it got tapped.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, there's like these kind of like churches that orcs hang out at that apparently they have a bottomless pit.
Yeah.
That okay, where did the bottomless pit come from?
Yeah.
I don't need a huge explanation. Just a little mention of why they need to toss other orcs into the bottomless pit.
They should have just made it like a 2,000-year sequel to like World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah, see, I get the feeling like if you're more ingrained in like in fantasy, that you would actually like question a lot more of it.
Yeah.
Like they offhandedly mention stuff like dragons and dwarves.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of like wait, what were you talking about?
Yeah, I want to see a dragon.
Wasn't there like something about like the dwarves hanging out with them in like Florida or something? Wait, what happened there? Go back to that.
Yeah.
And they never do because they're all talking about the wand the whole time.
How do we get on Bright? It's Suicide Squad. Okay.
Because we talked about Suicide Squad and Max Landis, and then we got to Bright.
All right. Well, what are we gonna?
Were there any films you saw recently?
Besides Solo and I mean, I rewatched The Shape of Water. I don't really think we need to.
Do you still? What's your opinion on The Shape of Water? I don't think I asked your full opinion on that.
I loved it. I thought it was so enchanting and charming and just fantastical in the fantasy sense.
Which Del Toro usually does pretty well.
Which I thought was great. The second time around watching it, I was like, I love the soundtrack even more.
Mm-hmm.
I love Sally Hawkins.
Oh yeah.
Even more.
And that Theremin soundtrack, my god.
Oh man. But yeah, like
honestly, I was kinda I liked the film, but I felt like I wanted more like the monster in that, because like we kind of like just kind of like casually get to that point where she forms that relationship with Duncan Jones's character, where I'm just kind of like
Doug Jones.
Doug Jones's character, where I felt like I wanted to see like more of that building a relationship.
I would have liked to see a little bit. They did
did
do sort of like a montage with like the eggs and her bringing in like the music and everything.
Yeah.
But I agree. I would have liked to see a couple more scenes, maybe showing them connecting a little bit more.
Yeah.
But like aside from that, like I felt like, my favorite shot in that movie is when they plug up the bathroom and they're and they let the water rise, and Richard Jenkins opens the door, and it's just an over the shoulder of her hugging him, and he's like glowing blue, and her eyes is just,
that's a great shot.
Like such an amazing. And I heard like they filmed like that scene alone like 3 hours or
Yeah.
something. Like they really had to get like the perfect moment.
Well, especially there's an illustrated poster of that. That's amazing. Have you seen illustrated poster?
No.
It's pretty much just that shot, just kind of like drawing like like you might see.
Is
on,
it
like,
the one
cover
that
of a
is it the
book.
one that Richard Jenkins is drawing in the movie kind of thing?
Similar to that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the other thing too. I forgot. Is I liked Richard Jenkins' character more, where I almost thought like he should be connecting with the monster, because there's that really great moment where they both connect, where they realize we don't quite fit into this world.
Yes.
That we have to alter ourselves, and I think that's mostly because his character, his side story, has much more overlap with it.
Yes.
That I almost wish the film was more about him than Sally Hawkins' character.
And it was also I guess it may have been a little bit more difficult with Sally, with Eliza's character being mute.
Yeah.
And so, like, that one scene where she has Richard Jenkins, say what she's, signing, like, that was so powerful, and you needed maybe a little bit more of that.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I get the feeling I might like it more if I watch it again.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of like wonderfully weird moments in it, and I think that was like the most glowing thing I could say, is that it's the kind of weird that you want to see out of Del Toro more.
I agree.
And I think it might be a little bit more. I think it might be a little bit more like a safe Del Toro film, because like it states its intentions pretty clearly. Because like I remember when Pan's Labyrinth came out, everyone was pissed at that film because they thought it was full fantasy, and it was kind of like this fantasy parallel.
This is a war. This is a war drama, and people just
no, but it's a war drama that parallels with fantasy.
Yeah.
That's what's so great about it.
And
I did want to mention though, I did like the set design. That was amazing, because like until they pull out from like Sally Hawkins' apartment, the way that they film it and the soundtrack they put over it, you'd swear it took place in Europe.
Yeah.
And then you pull out and you feel like, oh, this is actually in America. It's just really great set dressing they have
absolutely.
here.
I haven't seen many, like, aside from the big movies, but I've been watching some stuff on Netflix.
All right.
I watched Lost in Space.
The miniseries.
Yeah, it's
first season.
The first season. Really good.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing.
I enjoyed it a lot.
Well, Lost in Space, it doesn't have a great history, so
and
you
it's
obviously build up there.
I was raised on the original 60s series. Like, that's what I grew up with.
Yeah.
And
like the best thing you can say about the series is like you can tell if it's going to be a good episode or not based on the costumes.
Yeah.
Because if there are usually like really cheap costumes on there, and they come up with some really stupid story for them.
But this show, it's more of a reimagining. It's definitely more serious, but it still has some humorous moments to remind you, like, we're on a space adventure kind of thing. But yeah, it's definitely not the cheese of the original series. It's got the guy who plays the main character, Professor Robinson. I mean, he's not really a professor in this one, but
it's fine.
John Robinson is the main pirate from Black Sails.
Okay.
I can't remember his name, but he's he's good. Like Parker Posey is great. I don't want to. I mean, you find out in the first episode, but it's a nice sort of reveal. But the robot's really cool. Like
is Robbie good?
You mean Robbie is?
Is Robbie?
No, Robbie is from Forbidden Planet.
Oh, I keep thinking
but
that.
they did cross over. Like Robbie did appear in Lost in Space.
That's true.
Which was like awesome.
That's
like there's a moment near the end of the first episode where there's a line said that harkens back to like the original series, and I got a little emotional because like it made me like fond again of the original series, but it's definitely not on the cheese level. It's definitely more of a like
we can't ever go back to cheese.
No,
so, yeah.
No, but it's really good. Like, it's really enjoyable and entertaining, and it's got drama and seriousness and scariness and and then I started watching the Frankenstein Chronicles with Sean Bean.
I've heard that's pretty good. Yeah,
it's so far so good. I'm only a couple episodes in, but it's got a very kind of Penny Dreadful kind of darker, grittier kind of vibe to it. But I like it. And
There's a little bit of a run of those kind of I don't know what's the right term for it, like kind of like Victorian.
Yeah, like Gothic Victorian.
Yeah, Gothic Victorian kind of mysticism,
which is right up
stuff.
my alley.
Yeah.
And then I guess it's slightly older, but I started watching Into the Badlands, which is the post-apocalyptic samurai kind of thing. Well, they're not samurai, but
martial arts stuff.
Yeah. Which just kills me to see like how good the fights are when that could have been in Iron Fist.
Mm-hmm.
And you see like this show do it so much better, but it's a good it's a good post-apocalyptic drama, with great fights and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second season comes out on the 25th, but The Toys That Made Us, which is a documentary series on Netflix, and they have 4 episodes of the first season, and each episode talks about
different toy franchises.
Yeah. So they do Star Wars, Barbie, He-Man, and G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
And just like...
So there's one big one that everyone wants in there. Transformers.
I'm sure second season will definitely
of course it's gonna be, but I get a feeling it's gonna be like a 2-parter they're gonna have to do.
I don't know, but like that's a great documentary series.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's I've been watching some new series and stuff. So
I've watched a little bit, but I know like the He-Man one is probably a huge one.
He-Man was good
because He-Man was the first kind of franchise that had like the cartoon to promote it.
Yeah,
which became like the big theme in the 80s.
When they went over it, they were talking about how when they were trying to sell the toy line, and the distributors were like, well, how are kids going to know about this? And then one of the guys was like, well, there's a comic book. And then the other guys were like, there is? And then they made a comic book like right after. And then they tried to get like, they did more, and then they're like, well, there's a TV series, don't you know? And the distributors were like, oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
And then they so it was literally, they had to do this in order to get the toys sold.
Yeah.
And it turned out great for them.
Well, that's a lot of like the anime came over, because like it was, a lot of anime had like toy lines connected to it, and they were already made. So it's like, like Voltron's, like, how are we going to sell these toys? Well, there's this huge show we could, and I mean, like they would have to retool it, because like you wanted to do, because in order to get stuff in syndication, it had to be something like 60 some odd episodes. So it's like, we got a Voltron series, but it's only like 30 some odd episodes. Yeah, just find another show, just write it into it, and just add more episodes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like that took out. I think that partially happened with like Transformers too, because that was around the same time.
Yeah, it seems like in the 80s there was a lot of starting with the toys and then needing to fill a gap in order to market it better. And so they're like, let's do a TV show. So I think that might have been the same with G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
So
well, it's also a great way to escape network standards for that too, because syndication you could kind of take off the gloves.
True.
Because usually like you'd have to go through like networks and stuff like that, and they'd have to approve it. And with syndication, you could just make 60 some odd episodes, and you could just throw it to any local channel you want.
Yep.
And it takes off from there.
Yep.
Which was surprising that it would even take off like that. Because like from what I understand, most of them just kind of did a mini series that they would promote. Because I think He-Man kind of had a mini series. Transformers did. G.I. Joe did. And they'd usually like pick them up after that. So they'd make like one little complete package. They're like, hey, pick up our show and make it work. Sometimes it wouldn't work. Like they tried to do it with Chuck Norris. The Chuck Norris Karate Commandos. They made a little mini series out of it, and they had a toy line, and it didn't take off.
Nope.
But there were toys. So
I would say at the end of the Star Wars episode, I just love how the last shot, the last B-roll is shown, and then it like fades to black, and it's like, George Lucas refused to be interviewed for this episode, and I was just like, of course he did. Like, but why? I mean, like, George, come on, just talk. It was very. It was actually very very kind to him, because it talked about how like the original deal they made with Kenner was actually not good for them.
Yeah.
In terms of like George only got 2.5 cents out of the dollar, and Fox got 2.5 cents from the toys, and Kenner got the rest.
Yeah.
And then that deal was supposed to be in perpetuity only if Kenner paid them like $10,000 every year.
Yeah.
And when Hasbro bought Kenner, they forgot to pay George, so that's how he got the rights back to the. That's how he got the rights back, and he was able to renegotiate for 18 cents on the dollar with them. And I'm like, George, like this, why? Just give an interview. Like, come on, just don't.
I'm almost wondering if like he's just kind of not interested in the business aspect. Because I think for interviewing for something like that, he would really have to get more into like talking about business and figures and
laser swords. Laser swords.
And I get that at least from like the interviews I've seen, it seems like he's really not interested in talking about that anymore.
Yeah.
So
he's off building like museums and stuff.
Yeah, he'd rather talk about other artistic endeavors at this point.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I don't know. I get the feeling like he cut all these deals and he's just tired of it. It's like, I just want to make movies.
I want to make Red Tails 2.
I want to make Red Tails 2. Let's make it. Kickstarter, help me out.
Yeah.
So in terms of what we were talking about, Solo, a Star Wars film, I think is if you take yourself out of like the Star Wars lore, like like with fans taking it too seriously, don't take it too seriously. Go in knowing you're gonna just see like a kind of a decent heist film. And you'll have fun with it.
And I mean, if you're there's definitely the Star Wars fan that will love all the winks and nods.
Sure.
If you're one of those people who, when you're watching like Last Jedi or Rogue One and you see sort of like, oh, it's Mon Mothma or something like that, or they do like a little nod, and if that's you, you're gonna fucking love Han Solo. You're gonna.
Oh yeah.
But and for me, like, I'm not at that much of like the wink and nod kind of thing, but I still enjoy a nice little homage kind of thing. So I enjoyed it. I would still recommend seeing it, but it's definitely not
it's not like essential. Like I wouldn't rush out to see it immediately. Right. So
yeah,
but
it's like once you see it, like, I'm glad I saw it. But again, like if it was a movie that had never been made, I wouldn't be
crestfallen.
I wouldn't be crestfallen. Yeah. I wouldn't be waving my fist to the sky saying, "Why didn't we get a Solo film?"
But I forgot to mention, this film is actually a landmark. This is the very first Star Wars film where there is no C-3PO or R2-D2.
That's right.
This is the very first one.
Oh. Do you think if they had put that in as like a wink and a nod, you would have just like, you would have spat at the screen? Like, I feel like that would have been the line for you.
Yeah.
Like if they showed like, yeah, like one of the rebels or something having like R2's like following him or something, and R2 sees like Han Solo, and then C-3PO's like, oh, don't pay attention to him, just keep on going. Like, if they had done that, I feel like you would have just screamed.
I honestly wouldn't have cared. I didn't care in Rogue One.
Okay.
I wouldn't have cared. I would have like sighed like, you don't have to do that, but there's already enough droids running around. We don't need any more.
I mean, but yeah, because like up until this point, Anthony Daniels had been in every Star Wars movie, right?
And I forgot to mention this too. They did a variation on the text crawl.
That is true. Yep.
I expected it, because like in Rogue One they forewent the text crawl together, and here they fooled you by taking the long time ago.
Yeah.
And then building on that. It's like, oh, okay.
Like, no, we're gonna give it to you in bits, which is fine.
Well, that's
different.
Fine.
It's different.
So. I kind of dig that aspect. I watched a little bit. Like I try not to watch it, but like they did the CinemaSins on Last Jedi.
Yeah.
And I had to turn it off at the point where they said like, it's like, I don't understand how these ships have fuel. Like, how is it that these ships are so low on fuel and that the Millennium Falcon can zip around the galaxy? It's like, are you really comparing the fastest ship in all of Star Wars to these giant ass freighters?
Yeah.
And it's like I'm gonna lose my mind.
I stopped subscribing to CinemaSins a year or two ago. There's a video series called Everything Wrong With, which I found from you. Everything Wrong With. Yeah. And I watched the main video so what this guy does is he'll go through the Everything Wrong With videos, and he'll be like, this is what's wrong with what they think is wrong with like it, basically saying what CinemaSins is saying is bullshit, which a lot of times they are.
But they're doing more but he does more in those videos than just say they're bullshit. He
goes into like the actual film critique and talks about why this is necessary for the story, the narrative, like that. Yeah. He also does a video where he basically, it's a 30-minute video of him just destroying CinemaSins in general.
Yeah.
Which I watched, and it's, yeah, like, those guys, like, I would highly recommend, like, just not patronizing CinemaSins with, like, your clicks.
Yeah.
Because they just get, that's all they want is ad revenue, and they'll do it with, you know,
they're SEO guys. They know.
Yeah, and they say that they're like they're not film critics, but they're parodying it. But they sometimes they're critiquing, and sometimes they're not. And it's just
there's an easy out.
They're a bunch of assholes. And they half the time they don't know what they're talking about. The other half, you know, they think they know.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of, it's like they're preaching.
Yeah.
There's a great bit that the video has at the end where the Jeremy, who's the co-creator and the narrator of CinemaSins, where he has a video where he's like, it's when they were announcing like Winnie the Pooh remake or whatever. He's like, stop! Like you just gotta stop. You're like ruining the industry. Like you're devaluing it. Yeah. And taken out of context, you could apply his entire monologue to CinemaSins,
which he does
in the video, which is brilliant. But yeah, CinemaSins, I think, is, I don't like them.
Yeah,
it's just gotten to the point where they're either nitpicking or they're pointing out stuff that is just like stuff they don't like but actually makes sense for the film, but they just don't like it, and like, you're just being petty for the sake of being petty.
Yeah,
and I don't like that.
Well, that's kind of more like nitpickery stuff, which is kind of. Which, I mean, you know, most like fans will do stuff like that, and that's like a
okay. 20-minute video of it, yeah.
But it's like 20-minute videos of it, and they're almost kind of meant to, you know, like change your view of like the film, or or they kind of bring on like this ass, because if you scroll through like the comments and stuff like that, you'll see stuff like, it's like, oh, I used to like Captain America Civil War, but now I saw this video and now I hate it.
Yeah, and it's like, and they say they're not reviewing the film, but like media and like entertainment outlets use it as a review for the film, and people take it as a review. And one of the examples, the guy who, you know, critiqued CinemaSins, took like the video that they did for a very popular movie, and people in the comments were like, oh, I'm glad I didn't see this, it looks like crap. They were commenting about Get Out. And it's like, if CinemaSins can make you think that Get Out is like a bad movie, like, they're full of it.
They're lost on, that's the problem, and you can kind of see in their criticisms too, is like they get really lost on themes.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of very heavy themes in Get Out about like the combination of both, like, you know, like uncomfortability with race and your identity, and the kind of like, you know, societal twist that goes in between there.
Yes.
Where if you're not paying attention enough to pick up on that, you're just gonna be like, oh, this doesn't make sense.
Right.
So like, I would, you know, it's like watching CinemaSins go through like a Twilight Zone episode. They would just they completely miss the point of all the episodes.
Yeah.
And just say, it's like, oh, three-eyed aliens don't make sense. Cookbooks, I don't know.
Yeah. No,
that's that. Solo, decent lukewarm film, say. Yeah.
I'm more receptive to it, I think, than you are, but maybe that's just because you've been a film critic for so long. I don't know.
Well, I still go into films wanting to like them, and there are bits and pieces here that I acknowledge that, you know, that they are doing good film here, but it's just such a mess where I'm just kind of like, it's a decent heist film.
So I think I probably enjoy it a little bit more, but I'm also like,
I think because a lot of those like those adventurous elements, I think they're a little bit higher. Like it got to you more.
Yeah, a little bit more. Yeah. And I didn't mind as many. Like, I agree. Like, a lot of the winks and nods were a bit excessive, but I'm okay with those when they're done. You know, a little bit, just a small kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
and there are some decent ones they do in there.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Deadpool 2, I think I'm kind of in the same boat with that. It's more of the same.
But I was okay with that. I liked it a lot.
I mean, I'm okay with that too. I'm just I'm just a little bit disappointed that it couldn't be better than the first one. It just kind of seems like it's.
I thought it was better than the first one.
It feels like reheated leftovers. They still taste good, but
I thought it had enough like newer stuff with, you know, Cable and some of a lot of the cameos and jokes and stuff. I thought hit a lot better for me than the first Deadpool. Even though I love the first Deadpool, but I thought the scope of it in Deadpool 2, I enjoyed more. So
Hey, Sleepy Saboteur, you just got us to the tail end here. So yeah, I will be back. We'll be back next week. Well, I'll be back next week, I guess. I don't know if you want to come by, but
I may or may not. We'll see.
Well, we'll see. Because next week I'm going to be talking about. There's no big films that are coming out next week, but so I'm going to be talking about some smaller ones that I haven't got to, because usually around like summertime, or it seems pretty more commonly, there's been a lot of smaller films I've been getting lately. So I'm going to be talking about American Animals, which is a kind of a college heist film based on a true story, kind of true crime stuff. And The Misandrist, which is kind of an odd little surrealist film about a female-only colony that finds a man. And I have some weird words on that one.
Okay.
And just because, since no one's ever heard of those films, I'm also going to be talking about the best movies of the year so far. And there are a lot.
Yeah.
Offhand, do you want to mention any? What do you think is best film of the year?
I mean, I loved Infinity War.
Right.
A Quiet Place.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. Black Panther was February.
Yeah.
So I liked Black Panther. I don't know what else. I don't miss
Annihilation.
Oh, dude, Annihilation.
Yeah.
I thought was like, that movie.
That's freaking Transcendence, man.
Yeah.
I told everyone, because barely anyone saw it. I said, you guys are gonna kick yourselves when you see this on home video and say like, why didn't I see this in the theater?
Yeah.
Especially when you get to that trippy third act, you're like,
oh man,
you had to be in the theater to see that.
Just like heart pumping. I'm like, and it was that was a scary scene that terrified me.
Yeah.
Like. Shape of Water. Yeah, Shape of Water was last year.
Shape of Water was last year, but yeah, it didn't expand until like late January when the Oscar buzz was up, and that's usually when that happens. So yeah, it's tough. It's tough to recommend those films like that, especially that stuff like the Post didn't even pick up until like a few weeks after that. So it's not a terrible film.
It's boring.
Don't think Spielberg.
I'm not a huge fan of Meryl Streep. I'm gonna be honest. Like I think
she's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, but political-wise, you can falter, but I think acting-wise...
acting-wise, she's fine. Yeah. I mean, I would say, if I'm rating my fines, like, I rate Han Solo fine more than Meryl Streep fine, but, I thought she was... Yeah, she's fine.
Well, you heard of the Han Solo.
Yeah. I mean, Han Solo, hello. Like, Han Solo.
No, it's fair because every January's like dumping ground season. It's either like films that studios want to get rid of or films they, rushed in for Oscar season.
Yeah, what else was like, I don't know, what other great movies?
Paddington 2.
Haven't seen it.
Oh, you'll love Paddington 2, man. I love the hell out of that. It has my favorite Hugh Grant role ever.
Really?
I don't just like Hugh Grant in the film. I like this as one of his best roles ever.
Awesome.
In terms of being a villain. And I've seen what he can do in Cloud Atlas. He's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. I think that was the big one. Oh, and You Were Never Really There. Smaller film from this year, but I'll go into that more next time.
Okay.
Yeah, so thanks. We'll get plugs out of the way here. You can read my reviews at movieswithmark.com, moviespoon.com. You can find reviews of Solo Star Wars Stories on both websites. I also have I keep forgetting to bring this out every time. I also wrote some books here. Here's one. This is Pixels Premieres, A History of Video Game Movies. You can find that on Amazon. Where can we find your stuff?
Well, I table at local comic conventions, but I post my art on Facebook, Instagram, ArtStation. So my artist name is Brackenwald. It's Brackenwald. If you just Google Brackenwald, Twitter, lots of social media stuff or art sites, that's usually will be me. But I'm currently, working on fleshing out a webcomic and hopefully maybe get a site going and try and sell more of my stuff outside of cons. We'll see. But if you want to check out my art and follow me and just like my stuff, that helps for social media. Likes and follows always help. So
every bit helps. Well, thank you, everyone. So yeah, I'll see you either on another gaming stream that I do here, or I will see you next Thursday to try to talk about some smaller films that probably no one's ever seen. So hopefully you come back to hear some films you might not have heard of. So, but yeah, once I get into like June, we'll start talking about like the bigger ones, like The Incredibles and Jurassic World and all the big stuff.
And Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Ant-Man lost is July, but yeah, we'll get to it.
Oh yeah.
We'll get to it.
Yeah.
So, have a good night, everybody.